What's going on, guys? It's GBP baby. Welcome to another video. We are currently looking at DXY. We're going to do a weekly review and I'm going to tell you my expectations for the oncoming week. Just as a quick side note, from this week Wednesday until Sunday the 19th, I am going to be in a different time zone and I'm not sure if I'm going to be uploading in that time. So I do have some other videos that will be dropping in between then, and I will be active on the Discord server. So make sure to join the Discord server, or make sure to leave the link in the description below. But yeah, let's get straight into it. You can see that this week we traded nicely into this bearish order block. These two candles make the bearish order block. We traded right up to the top of it, well, the volume of the order block, and then we closed below it, which is nice to see. Remember, my overall bias for dollar is bearish, so I do want to see dollar continue to show bearishness and to trade lower. We've also created a fair value gap resting here now as well. So I'm going to quickly draw out that this fair value gap as a potential draw. I'm going to make this blue. Let's make it purple. So we have a fair value gap which price might want to draw to on the sell side. And remember, we've just traded into this big weekly bearish order block. So we are expecting, I'm now anticipating some kind of down movement and look for sell and hunt for sell side liquidity. If we drop down to the daily, we can have a better look. You can see we traded to the 50% level off that blue fair value gap I just showed you on the weekly, and then we turned around and closed below it, which is nice to see. There's also another fair value gap that's been created here. So I want to see if price can trade through that and actually close below it. That will then again support my bias of wanting to see lower dollar. Let's drop down to the 4 hour, and you'll notice on the 4 hour I've marked out this inversion fair value gap. Why is this an inversion fair value gap? Because it's been traded on the upside and then it's also been traded on the downside, meaning that this fair value gap now should act as resistance. So you can see this fair value gap acted as support here, because when price came to it, it showed support, and then when we broke down on the Friday during non-farm payroll, it should now then act as resistance because we've traded through it on the downside. And yeah, we traded down through it and also touched that other daily. Remember, this is a daily fair value gap. Traded through that and then just turned away from it at the end of the day and retraced back into itself. So what am I expecting? Well, I'd like to see the high of the week this week made within this 4 hour fair value gap. So that means I'm allowing price to trade into that. This is the highest I'd expect price to go. Any higher and my bias would change and I'd have to re-evaluate. But overall, I'm expecting to find resistance at this level here. So I'm going to extend this out throughout the week because I'm expecting this to be the high of the week. You'll notice I've also marked out the 50% level with this black line. This black dashed line is the 50% level, which would be consequent encroachment. That ideally is the highest I'd like to see price reach for it to then turn around. Furthermore, we do have a breaker. We've got a swing high here, a swing low here. We've got a higher high here, and then what happens? Price breaks lower, meaning that this whole range here, this segment of price action, this is now a breaker, so it lines up perfectly with that 4 hour inversion fair value gap. So that's all supportive. And you'll also notice I've marked out, let's go to the hourly actually, and you'll see that I've marked out with yellow lines the lows of each of the three of these days here. Why have I done that? Well, the reversal last week happened on the Thursday, and the low got taken on the Friday of the day. Let me say that again. The reversal happened on Thursday, so I marked out the low of that day, and then on Friday we took out that low. So now, thanks to Purge and Revert, which is a video by ICT where he explains about basically just about reversals, I'll make sure to leave a link below. But we can now anticipate price to run to the lows of the previous 3 days, and you can see it's already done that in one move here. So we took out the low here, we took out the low here from Wednesday, and took out the low here from Tuesday. So that means my next target in general would then be these lows, this sell side liquidity resting here, and this sell side liquidity resting here. So that's what I'd like to see get taken in the new week. Furthermore, we do have PPI on Friday and CPI on Thursday. So that's why. So I can imagine that by we get to Thursday and Friday, there's going to be a lot of price action and a lot of volatility that might help push the market lower and into this sell side liquidity. Also, one more thing to note, let's not forget this massive liquidity void we have here. So there is reason for price to want to draw to these levels because we have all of this upside delivery which hasn't been delivered on the downside. So there's this massive inefficiency down here that I can anticipate price wanting to draw down into. We can also use this to create a range. So if I get my Fibonacci and mark the low of this range and run it up to the top, we can see just about where we are. and you can see we just traded nearly to 50% level, and when we get to the 50% level, we anticipate a run on stops anyway. So, you know, seeing a retracement like this is completely expected, and it'll be nice just to continue to track price to see if we can run into this sell side liquidity resting here and here. So yeah, I'm expecting lower dollar next week. Let's jump to GBP and take a look. So I'm going to start with the weekly on GBP, and obviously if I'm expecting lower dollar, that means I'm expecting higher GBP. You can see GBP traded down into this bullish order block here. We wicked right down to just past actually consequent encroachment of this wick, as you can see, traded right down into that, and then we closed just above this order block, well, inside the order block, so to speak. One thing to take note of as well, if we look at the volume of the order block, you can see we closed just at the 50% level of it, which is nice to see. But yeah, I'm expecting higher prices. When I'm looking for buy side targets, and there's a lot of, you know, back and forth price action like this, that's when I start to look at the highs. For example, this high here and this high here. So next week, in the new week, I'd expect this high to be a target on the week on the weekly chart, so to speak. So if I write this out as buy side liquidity, and then we'll just run that out, and then we'll drop down to the daily and have a better look. So if you've been watching my videos this week, you'll know that price pretty much done exactly as I anticipated, which was nice to see. And yeah, we traded nicely down. It was just a great week, to be honest, and I'm going to be releasing some of my trade executions on the non-farm payroll next week, in the new week, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. So what other premium PD arrays can we see on this daily chart? Because remember, we're expecting lower dollar, which means higher GBP, so we should be looking for premium PD arrays. Well, we have this fair value gap here, which hasn't yet been traded to, so I'm going to mark that out as a potential target. I'm going to make that orange. And one thing to take note of as well is that we now have an inversion fair value gap. Where? Here. So this was traded on the downside, then the upside. So what should this now act as? Support. So we can make that blue. This is an inversion fair value gap. So if price is to return back into this on the new day, whether that be Monday, Tuesday, whatever day, we want to see it provide support. I'm also going to mark out the 50% level because that would be consequent encroachment, which will therefore show the maximum low I'd like to see GBP make. The same way I'm expecting that high to be made in that inversion fair value gap on dollar. So that's the midpoint. I'm just going to make a dashed line here, like so. And yeah, I want to see if price can start to reach up for that fair value gap, and potentially, depending on how volatile we are, this buy side liquidity. Let's go down to the 4 hour and we can have a better look. So we had a beautiful reversal on the Thursday, and then we came down, traded into this small fair value gap during non-farm payroll, and then had a beautiful trade up into this order block where we just turned around, and now we've just retraced. Where we retraced to, back to that daily inversion fair value gap I was talking about, and you can see it's stacked almost perfectly at the 50% level, which is interesting, with another fair value gap on the 4 hours. So that's even more reason to anticipate price to want to dip down into that and then use that to springboard higher. Furthermore, we have a breaker. Where's the breaker? Low, high, lower low. So this swing here is what the breaker is. If we drop down to the hourly, we should be able to get a better look. It'll be this candle specifically, so I can drag that out, although I don't think there's any need because you can see that pretty much lines up perfectly with the fair value gap anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm expecting. You can see there's relative equal highs here, this swing high here and this swing high, and this swing high all creates relative equal highs. So there's liquidity resting above that, which price is going to want to draw to. So I'm going to draw that out as buy side liquidity, as in I'm going to make a line and then label it buy side liquidity, because that's where I want to see price draw to. And you'll see that even above these highs, we've got relative equal highs and a fair value gap, and even more up here with a massive liquidity void, just like we see on dollar but inverted. So I do want to see price come down, find some kind of support, and then springboard higher and start to run for this buy side liquidity resting here, here, and into this fair value gap. So finally, I'm going to go to Euro. How long have we been talking for? Nearly 10 minutes. Right. Actually, before I go to Euro, I do want to talk a little bit about what I'm expecting with with pound. You'll see that we've closed quite aggressively lower here, and there is actually a breaker which I want to draw our attention to. If we go to here's the breaker. So if this low, and then we got on the non-farm payroll, we made this massive wick up and wick down. So there is actually a break here because we have a low, we have a lower low, and then we break higher. So we got a low, a high, a lower low, and then we break higher, right? Making this the breaker in general. So although this daily fair value gap is here, on the daily, I anticipate us to close above the 50% level, but that doesn't mean that price cannot still come down into this fair value gap and collect stops in order to springboard higher. So I am actually going to draw out this as a fair value gap as well. And I know it's on the 5 minute, but I do anticipate price to want to come all the way down here in order to make the low of the week and then again move higher. But yeah, it's quite interesting that. So that's what I'm going to leave there. And instead of using the same color, let's use yellow. Ooh. Cool. But yeah, it's pretty hard to explain, but basically there's a breaker within this fair value, within this liquidity void, which is why I'm anticipating price to want to draw into that, collect stops, and then hopefully they'd use that to move higher. So let's go to euro to finish off the video. I've got a lot of marking outs here, a lot of marking outs. You'll see that I've also done the same thing that I did on dollar in terms of marking out the highs here. I don't know where these markings are from actually. There's quite a lot going on here, so I'm just going to clear my charts and we're going to start fresh. We'll start from the weekly. Euro, as you can see, traded nicely down into this bullish order block, and then we've also now created a fair value gap here, so price will want to draw into that. And remember what I said earlier, when I'm looking for buy side liquidity and there's a lot of back and forth action, I use the highs as targets. So this high will now be a target, and it'll be especially a target now that we have this fair value gap created there. So I'm going to leave that like that. Let's make this 50%, and we'll drop down to the daily now. And you can see our price traded aggressively above this swing high, showing bullishness. And we also got a breaker, low, high, lower low, and I expect price to then use this as a breaker. When we anticipate price using a certain area as a breaker, and in this case it will be this swing high here. Once price is trading through that, I want to see it rush through that. So if we drop down to the 4 hour, we might be able to get a better look. Basically what I'm saying is when price does come down after it's made the low of the week, I'd want it to rush aggressively through these levels here. You can see there's relative equal highs here, here, and here, and I'd like to see it run into these highs as well. So there's a lot of relative equal highs on euro, and I can imagine it's going to show quite a lot of strength when it's pushing up higher. So let's just mark out the buy side liquidity. I'm going to get rid of this really quickly. And we have buy side liquidity resting here, and beautiful buy side liquidity resting here with a fair value gap. So there's a reason for price to want to draw up there. In terms of making the low of the week, there should be an inversion fair value gap somewhere, just like we found on pound. We have this one here, so we can anticipate price maybe wanting to come down to that, grab stops, and then start to work its way up into this buy side liquidity and run for these highs. But looking at yeah, that makes sense. Up to the hourly. Got a low, a high, a lower low. So this whole candle here is a breaker in itself anyway. So I'm expecting price to want to accumulate positions in here and then again spring higher from this. But it's a lot more cleaner price action in GBP. So this pair would probably be the better pair to be looking at in this week, in the new week. Yeah guys, that's everything. Thank you for watching. Remember, don't forget to join the Discord because I'll be posting all my analysis there if I don't manage to upload in the new week. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill. This has been GBP baby, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Also, by the way, I'm expecting Monday to be quite heavily consolidated. Just saying, like Monday I wouldn't suggest trading. Tuesday I can imagine is going to be a nice day. It'd be nice to see if the high can get made on Tuesday. But other than that, everything's good. See you soon.